Tepu, everyone. Peace and blessings. Of course, it's always great to be with you. And I hope that you are receiving what we're sharing. And it is my hope that you'll be able to utilize the skills, the tools, let us say, the small bits of information and where there is knowledge that you might be able to utilize in bettering your life, those around you, your community, and you'll be able to walk in a greater way in a life of peace and harmony. Today we're going to talk about balance. Balance is really challenging to achieve. Oftentimes, this is balance. In the Martian concept, balance, once achieved in anything that we do, creates a greater sense of peace within us. So I'm only going to touch on a couple of aspects of balance. Balance can manifest itself in many different ways, in many levels. So the balance expression that we're going to talk about today is how grief and depression can impact our relationship. We've talked about anger and other kinds of emotions that limits our capacity to express ourselves in harmonious ways, in righteous tones, in receiving information, processing that, and then responding to others in our life. And one of the things you need to always remember is that we as communal beings, we as social beings, we're always interacting with each other. I speak to you and you respond. So there's an action coming from me, and then there's a response or reaction. Oftentimes, how we receive the information is based on how it has been delivered to you. So if I approach you in a manner that is not peaceful, then your response, or if I am agitated, then you're going to respond many times in like manner. Agitated, angry, why are you talking to me, and why are you snippy? So what I'm saying is, and sometimes not, I can approach somebody in a calm, peaceful way, and depending on how they're triggered by that, they can come back at me with a not so nice response. The thing, however, is that I also have the capacity to choose how I'm going to react or respond. So I can take the high road, or I can respond in agitated, and then we have a situation that is no longer peaceful. Or I can make the choice to walk away. So today it's about grief and depression, how that imbalances us, and how we also have to pay attention to our environment, how we live. I've worked quite a bit with people who have experienced grief and depression. A lack of joy, or moping, or an unhappy affect can, carried out on a continuum, can create an aura of diminished vitality in your life and ripple through your family. So when you are down in the valley, which is what we call depression, and when we are experiencing joy, whatever, we're on top of the mountain. So when you're in the valley, what happens is that there's a tendency to cut oneself off from others. There's a tendency to go into your room, cover your head, okay? You don't want to interact with people. You no longer engage in family activities. Sometimes it goes so far as there's no self-care, to the point of not taking a bath or a shower, okay? Depression, I've seen where people eat very little. They start to not take care of their nourishment, okay? And in extreme cases, they stop working. So what that does is it creates for the partner, the other person in the family, it becomes, for lack of a better word, a weight. It can become a burden. How that person interacts with you, your capacity to move out of that depressed state. And sometimes when your partner, your husband or wife, tries to engage you to talk about why you're depressed or why you're feeling that way, the withdrawal becomes worse, okay? In such cases, if the depression is prolonged, then we need to consider other actions. And we'll talk about that when we talk about possible solutions. The grief part of things sometimes occurs, heavy grief will occur in the case if a husband or wife, becomes deceased. And it depends on the circumstances, of course. And especially if the relationship was very close and very loving, then it is difficult. Grief also in a family can be visited upon that family when a child, dies. A child might be sick, or it may be an accident, or it could be a fatality, a tragedy. It can take years for a parent to move beyond this loss. It can take years for a wife to move beyond the loss. For some people, they will vocalize, they wish that they had died instead of the child or the husband or wife. And in other cases, and sometimes actually, depending on the situation, they can become very angry. And that anger is lashed out at, in the case where a child may die, one of the other persons in the house can blame the other parent and lash out at them. You never liked them anyway. You didn't care about them. So it doesn't matter that they're dead. And you don't whatever, and so forth in that moment. And of course, there's also the ultimate where people become very angry with God, with the Creator, and said, why did God do this to me? How could God do this to me? I don't believe in God. I don't think there's any higher power. Why? What did I do to deserve this? Why would you take my child? Why would you take my husband? We were so happy. That kind of thing. So grief and loss are emotions that can impact us deeply. Another aspect of balance. So we don't want to over-grief ourselves. We need to get a proper handle, a perspective on that, because it can destroy the rest of our relationship. Another aspect of balance is paying attention to the environment we create in our home. In other words, I am talking about how cleanliness, okay? If you live in a place that is cluttered and unclean, over time, that vibration can affect you. It can create chaos. When the psyche is looking at things that are out of order, let's say, and a home that is not clean, that has odors and so forth, if one partner or the children or the habit is there's chaos going on with maintaining cleanliness, it can impact the quality of life that we live. So that also goes for your yard, your outside. Some people live like Sanford and Son, because they have to bring home, the lawn cutter and every kind of tool that they can find, or so forth. Front yard, backyard, it looks like a hillbilly house. So we have to pay attention to that. Your home should be your haven. It should be your place of refuge where you go. So creating an environment that is, pleasant. It doesn't have to be full of a whole bunch of expensive trapping. It can be very simple. You know what I'm saying? Family pictures, good lighting, clean walls, basic sofa, something to sit on. It does not have to be extremely overdressed. Cleanliness has two components to it in the sense of personalities. You have some people they call neat freaks or clean freaks. And then you have the sloppy Joe. So when a sloppy Joe person and a neat freak person comes together, it can get very interesting. The extremity of that, in terms of the two extremes within the personality, requires balance. You have to sit down. You have to find compromise. Compromise creates peace. Helps to create balance and harmony in your environment. Extreme cases of, in terms of dealing with balance in your home can come from where I say it's disharmonious. It's not a pleasant place to be. If a person has the habit of being a hoarder, hoarding takes on a whole other dimension, and it has really strong negative implications because a lot of times it can impact the financial condition of the family. It can create situations where people can end up even losing their home because of the extreme expenditures of that. You sometimes go in a house and the person who is a shopaholic or a hoardaholic will have things in closets. They'll buy things that the other person doesn't know. Bank accounts will come up missing, right? Or totally wiped out. And they would not have consulted the other party about that. So we have to create balance within ourselves, because that is where balance starts. And then in our environment. And remember, the things that we do as adults, how we live, the way we carry our home, the way we set it up, we are creating conditioning processes for our children to follow. So if the kitchen is never clean, if the bathroom is always sloppy, you can go to the mother's house and see that you go to the daughter's or the son's house and you see the same environment. We pass on our habits and we condition our children and our families to behaviors and habits that need change. As always, we will talk about some possible changes in thinking, processing that, and things that we can also do, some skills that we can put in place in order to change our condition and create balance. Peace and blessings, and thank you for listening.